there anybody else that wants to sign up that didn't get a chance to sign up? Good.
Huh? There's someone that signed up, but I'm not able to read the name. Alan starts with an S or SHROP.
Adrian Shropshire.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Is that the person?
That's Lady Shropshire. S-H-R-O-P. S-H-I-R-E.
All right, say it again. I'm sorry. SH.
R-O-P. S-H-I-R-E.
And first name is A-B-R-I-A-N.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Attorney for Ferguson. Prisock.
Hi, Patricia Washington. City. Mhm.
You good?
All rise. The Honorable Court is now in session. You can be seated. All right, we are here for the quarterly status conference in the United States versus City of Ferguson 416 CV 180. I see many people here, and I'm glad to see you. I'm going to turn this over to the clerk to give the speech she needs to give at the beginning of each session. All participants are reminded of the prohibitions regarding photography, recording, and broadcasting of court proceedings. Participants who violate Local Rule 1302 may face sanctions, including restricted entry to future hearings, denial of entry to future hearings, or any other sanctions deemed necessary by the judicial officer. So that is, I will just add to that, that is a rule that is the court rule, and we do expect it to be followed. I'm glad that there are people on listening to this remotely, but this covers them as well, and it's important. And there could be sanctions, including contempt of court proceedings for anyone who chose to violate that rule. So after saying that, now we'll say I'm glad to see you all here today. I guess let me have the lawyers introduce themselves before we have the public speak and say who's sitting at our tables. So from the department.
Good morning, Your Honor. Amy Senior for the United States.
And Jorge Castillo for the United States.
Apollo Carey, City of Ferguson.
Ryan Priceock, City of Ferguson.
All right, and then for the monitor.
Good morning, Natasha Tidwell on behalf of the monitoring team.
Great. And I guess, Mr. Carey, you usually introduce all the people from the city who are here. Do you want to wait until we've already heard from the public first?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
So today is the day for public comment, and so I'd like to begin with that. And I see that there were people who signed up, and I appreciate that. And so I will ask you all to do what we've done before, and most of you have been here before. So when you come up, I'll have you speak from the lectern and state your name, and then it's a 5-minute rule, and so the yellow light will come on when you have a minute left, and the red light will come on when your 5 minutes is up. And so I appreciate that. And Ms. Kleins, I think you're first, so why don't you come on up? So you can just stand right there and speak into the mic. That's great.
Good morning.
Morning.
Judge Perry. First, I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to allow the community to speak today. I know I really appreciate that because you didn't have to do that. I've spoken before.
And you're Mildred Kleins, correct?
Yes, Mildred Kleins.
I like if you say that at the beginning, then that's in the record,
Yes,
so that
ma'am.
everybody.
So this is a little intimidating.
Yeah?
Kind of nervous, but my name is Mildred Kleins. I'm a 37-year resident in Ferguson, and I did take a little notes, but I mostly just like to speak from my heart and off the cuff. But what I want to talk about today is where we are as a city, in my opinion, in the city of Ferguson. And from the beginning of the consent decree, I have been involved and following and doing my part as a resident to help to try to heal the city and to move the city forward from where I've known the city has been in the past. And I've already said I'm so thankful that the DOJ came into the city because we needed help and we didn't know what to do and how to get all the issues that we had going on in our city. We didn't know what to do as a community. So when the DOJ came in and actually saw the things that we had been living with for all these years, and we entered in this consent decree, many of us were so happy. So since we've had this consent decree, we've had so many police chiefs, so many city managers, and in my opinion, the reason we've had so many changes is because there is a group in Ferguson that is just bent on keeping the status quo. They did not see anything wrong with what the city was doing. We didn't have any problems, and that group is still fighting. And that's why I feel like we're still here today. Now, has progress been made? Yes, but there is still so much more to do. And in my opinion, all the police chiefs that we've had since the consent decree, they have all been great, but they've been undermined by our city council, and to me, that's what the issues are and still continue to be. Even with our city managers, the same thing as well. We just recently had at a city council meeting where some of the members on the council was talking about suing the DOJ to try to get out of this consent decree. So that's why. And then just recently, our city council voted against the advice of our city attorney. I feel like we're still in trouble. And I know before we brought issues like this before you, and you were like, okay, so when the people are not happy with their elected officials, you all know what to do. So that's the work that we as a community are doing and trying to do, is to get the right people on our council to do what's best for our city and to move our city forward. I've been a member of the MPSC since its inception as well, and we have worked, oh my God, so tirelessly because the police department has allowed us to give our input and work on the different policies that concern the city, the residents, and the police department. They allowed us to kind of give our input, and we have worked tirelessly on those. But it seemed like every time the person in that position changes, like the consent decree coordinator, whomever, then all the work that we've done as a committee, the NPSC, is like either lost or discarded, So that is frustrating. Let me see what else I want to make sure I touch on. I basically just want to say I'm just grateful for all the work that those that are really concerned and really meaning to help our city get past what has happened in the past. And I think I'm so grateful for all the work. And I see the work, we see the work, we recognize it, but it is still a lot to do. And I'm going to tell you another thing that's really important is when you have people that's either on staff or on city council that's been there since 2014 or prior to 2014, and they have that mindset that, they're just picking on us. The government's just picking on us. The DOJ is just picking on the city of Ferguson. And then when you bring new people in, we're bringing new people in, but then you got that person with that kind of mentality spewing that type of messaging over to new people. It's kind of like a rotten apple. You put a rotten apple with some good apples, and it kind of, makes that good apple tainted as well. So I know we got a lot of work to do. I just wanted to speak here and to say thank you so much. We hardly ever get this opportunity, so thank you for listening.
Thank you for speaking. Yeah, and the, your good apple, bad apple. I mean, that happens in workplaces, and I understand what you're saying, and in cities and in communities. So
Yes, ma'am.
I hope that things can, that people can have more positive attitudes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, Adrian Shropshire.
My name is Adrian Shropshire. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning, citizens, and good morning, court. First of all, I want to let you know a little bit what I do in Ferguson. I'm with the Ferguson Youth Initiative. I am with the MPSC, Neighborhood Policing and Steering. I'm with the Citizens Interview Panel for the police officers. I'm on the Citizens Training, on the training committee that works with the training credentials that the police officers go through. And I'm a 38-year citizen of Ferguson. I've been there through the good and, well, let's put it like this, I've been there through the bad and the good. First of all, I want to give thanks to let you know, I want to give thanks to Lisa Stevens, Ms. Stevens, and for working with us on the training specialist. And I want to give a thanks to Ms. Pat Washington. She is our PIO officer and standing in for the consent decree coordinator. She's doing a great job. Both of those people are doing a great job for our city. Starting out, I would like to let you know about our Police Explorer post. We've opened up we're recruiting for explorers. I think the ages are 14 to 18, and we are a certified Boy Scout troop. It's 9231, I think. And we started that just, matter of fact, last month, we rolled that out. The Ferguson Police Department, they are asking for feedback from the citizens on policies as far as community safety. We will be starting a community safety coalition program. The chief has started that, and we do have a committee that has been setting in. We've had meetings on that, and we hope to get that going this month. Chief Doyle was recognized by the YMCA for the MLK Strong Community Award. Chief Doyle is doing a great job far as bringing good people into our police force. I've been on the interview panel now probably for the last 6 years, and this is one of the best recruiting sessions that we've had.
That's very good to hear.
We're bringing in younger, smarter, more intelligent, and community-based employees. One thing we are getting is we're getting police officers that have been to the academy that are coming in with a degree. And that is very important, I feel, when you have a double skill and when you're doing something both sides to help the community out. The training committee, we are going through a training procedures, and we have Martin Bartness. He's he's the SME out of Minnesota. I think it's Minneapolis, from their police force. And we on the training committee, we did need a bit of training, and it never hurts to get training and to keep us focused in on the big picture. We do a lot of work, and we have a lot of papers coming through and a lot of training coming through our group that's moved on to the DOJ. and far as being implemented into our police force. One more thing I want to talk about is staffing. I feel we are right now, I think we're like at 85%. I've been doing interviews through the month of January. We did interviews. Now we're going to be doing interviews, citizen interviews on internal promotions, and that'll start next week. So I think that's going to be a great thing for sergeants and lieutenants, I think. One more thing about inside promotions. Well, my time is
go
up.
Ahead. You can go ahead and finish.
I think internal promotions are great because they have been with us and they know our community. And that's a very important part of community engagement and community outreach. I have something here I'd like to leave with you.
Okay.
I'll give it to the bailiff and you can
Give it to her right
to
here.
her. Okay.
The clerk right here will take it. Thanks.
This is part of our report that was given by the chief.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for giving the time for me to speak, and you have a good day.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Butler, Cassandra Butler. All right, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Your Honor. I appreciate your continuance in presiding over the Ferguson consent decree, particularly during times like this when the entire United States Constitution is being assailed. I take some comfort in your leadership in this case, which is simply about assuring that our local government is made consciously aware that they are expected to consider and respect the civil rights of all of its citizens and peoples who come within its borders. In times like this, I feel like I am Princess Leia when she sent a message to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. Judge Perry, you are our only hope. Thank you for your efforts to not let us down. I especially thank you for deciding you wanted to provide an opportunity for public speaking every other quarter for the public to speak to you directly. As you likely recall, in the last couple of years, I have focused on the internal operations of the council and administration that has hampered real and steady progress in this agreement. The behavior reminds me of a teenager promising to do better, but because they resent being forced to do better, they are not sincere in their actions and are only waiting for the day when they can undo the progress made and revert back to their natural state of behaving. We have members in the majority of the council freely disparaging the consent decree publicly in council meetings. One of the topics I have brought up with the council numerous times is their penchant to look at the technical aspects of our city laws and ordinance and their satisfaction with finding loopholes to suit their preferences. The majority on the council is quite pleased to follow the letter of the law, which is where they operate with enough loopholes rather than looking at and honoring the spirit of the laws. They honor exerting their power through micromanaging the administration as much as they can, individually, as well as the collective majority. Your Honor, this significantly accounts for the higher turnover we have had in the critical positions of police chief, city manager, and consent decree coordinator. I state this because this attitude is why, if they seem to indicate that they will behave as expected without supervision of the court, I very well have my doubts. Your Honor, as we have observed changes in personnel at the police department to carry out the work of implementing the consent decree, I have observed changes in the administrative division that give me concerns about what will happen if the police department, what will happen in the police department once the consent decree is ended. As the police department has steadily become more diverse, better reflecting the community it serves, the administration is becoming less diverse. As a member of the recently reactivated personnel board, I am concerned about some key positions which were not posted or announced before they were filled. Similar to what is happening at the federal level, it seems that comfort level with the appointed person is the more valued virtue over experience. Concurrently, it seems as if resident input is shunned. For instance, when the Personnel Board discovered that the Human Resource Director position was vacant again, we asked to have one member participate in the interview process for the next Human Resource Director. Not only was this request denied, we were specifically told, quote, I did not know that I need to inform you, referring to the vacancy. And I do not see anywhere where I need to have you on the hiring committee, end of quote. The point of sharing this communication is to show the attitude of not necessarily considering if something is right or appropriate, but instead depending on the understanding of whether they need to or they have to. This attitude is prevalent toward other city committees and commissions, such as the Human Rights Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission. This example is an indication to me that the city, including the majority of the council, is in a make me do it mode, poised to revert back to its preferred ways once the consent decree is ended. As I described earlier, the resentful teenager is only biding his time. Council members have expressed their intent to reach out to our U.S. senators and representatives to ask for their assistance in ending the consent decree. Many with the power are not sincere in their actions and do not appreciate how the consent decree makes us a better municipality. Judge Perry, I express again, thank you for being our hope.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Next, we have Erica Brooks.
Good morning, Judge Perry.
Morning.
My name is Erica M. Brooks. I'm a 12-year resident of Ferguson, Missouri. Also a two-time candidate for City Council, Ferguson, Ward 2. My son and I also were the grassroots organizers to retain our bus service in Ferguson, number 79, which is going to be eliminated by the City of Ferguson as well as Metro in 19. And we retain that bus service. That's why it still runs through our neighborhood as well as the business district. I'm saying all that to say about the struggles that we are still experiencing in Ferguson, racial struggles that are in Ferguson, discriminatory practices that are being experienced in Ferguson. I wanted to start off by saying this quote by Rana Alda Falter. It says, if you want to understand a problem, you look at its cause. You don't look at the manifestation. And that's what a lot of times people in Ferguson try to do is make us look at the manifestation of the situation, not the people and the root of the cause of things that are happening to disenfranchise us legislatively in Ferguson. A lot of things that Ms. Klein mentioned about the policies and procedures that are being done. And one thing that I really want to talk about is how our city attorney was voted down when it came to a bill to understand just legal parameters for our city to not be sued or not exclude somebody in future situations. And for the city council members to say, okay, we're going to give this to our legal attorney that's representing the city, and then the council persons say, well, we're not going to look at what he's talking about. We're going to find somebody else from the state, whoever else, to get some legal assistance. That's ridiculous. And I'm saying that also to say, when it comes to the the mannerism of our city council members is four in particular: Linda Lipka, Michael Palmer, Nick Kassoff, and David Williams. When it comes to listening to us as a people, their voices are never represented on their own terms. When it comes to us being able to voice our opinion about bill number 7282, which they came back, it was like Jim Crow by another name being brought back as bill number 7303. I was physically ran up on by Councilwoman Linda Lipka after a meeting when I was trying to address something with Councilman David Williams. She ran up on me in my face to where I had to ask the security to get her out of my face. And as a citizen, I know that it would be inappropriate for me to address her in that same manner. When it comes to David Williams, he told me that I was not talking about shit. As a city council person, it's like I've vividly said over and over again about the bill 7282 when it comes to us as a community being able to have rights as far as housing is concerned. I know this is about the police department, but it all boils down to the leadership that we have in our community that, yeah, you said that we as community voted. I didn't vote for them, the ones that I mentioned, the four that I mentioned, because they're not representing us as a community. But when it comes to the structure from the head down to us as far as citizens that need to be heard, we're not being heard. So when it comes to people talking about, well, let's get rid of the consent decree, we won't have a voice. We won't have legal justice. We won't have anything that all of this stands for. That all boils down to the leader in charge, the chief in charge of our country, which is that Donald Trump, that's want to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so those same practices that he's preaching from the top all the way down to Ferguson are the same thing that we're experiencing in our legislative representation from the people that sit there on that dais. As far as disrespect between the races that's on that, even though David Williams is black, he represents the people that voted him in, and they're not black. And a lot of them, they might be black, but a lot of them are white. And so he sits there and constantly justify the disrespect that's in the community. And like I said, it started with him disrespecting me and told me that I wasn't talking about shit. And like I said, I appreciate you all listening. But if you don't, first of all, like I said about this quote, if you want to understand the problem, look at the cause. You don't look at the manifestation. So if you can please look at the structure of the people that say they're our leaders to understand the mindset of how things are going with this consent decree. And like Ms. Klein said, if you got a bad apple, that one bad apple is going to continue that same flow of mentality of what they call Ferguson with this rebranding called turning a new leaf thing. It's the same leaf that's been turned over. So I appreciate it if you can, like I say, look into all of the whole thing, not just the police department. And I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Okay.
All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Mueller.
Good morning, Your Honor. It's Alan Miller. As always, my wife and I very much appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts to the court. We are now in the longest period of administrative stability since the consent decree went into effect. Both our city manager and police chief have been with us for several years. We also are celebrating the one-year anniversary for Ms. Patricia Washington and Lisa Stevens and really appreciate all that they have done. We appreciate the improvements in communication provided by the Department of Justice and the Monitor. The Monitor's November status report was very helpful, and we'd like to thank Ms. Tidwell and her team. To reinforce the value of these town halls, to reinforce the value that we've seen, Proud continues to receive requests for the YouTube link to the DOJ's town hall from last July. The city's communications, however, need to improve. Despite many requests from the public, There still has been no progress on a public dashboard that would allow the public to assess progress on the consent decree compliance. The limited information on the city's website mostly dates from the first years of the consent decree. Moving on to the Neighborhood Police Steering Committee, we are very concerned about reports that the City Council is considering changing the composition and abilities of the NPSC. With Ms. Washington's help revising the Community Policing and Engagement Plan, the NPSC was able to clarify its role in fulfilling the duties outlined in the consent decree. Our discussions made it abundantly apparent that the NPSC must remain independent of the city government so as to build trust with the Ferguson community. Only this way can the NPSC provide the independent platform for community input required by the consent decree. Continuing with the NPSC, we thank Ms. Washington for setting up a town hall to discuss the new policy on aerial surveillance technologies. The City Council recently approved funding for drones and other unspecified technologies. It is essential that the community understands what technologies are being put into use and that there are policies in place to ensure they are being used in compliance with the consent decree and protecting our civil rights. Like the NPSC, we believe the Training Committee must maintain the composition and duties similar to those it currently has. The Training Committee could benefit from the inclusion of police officers, but otherwise, its independence from the City Council and government is essential. The committee's role in the annual assessments of the training plan, per paragraph 55 of the consent decree, clearly shows the need for the strong community input and the independence that volunteers bring. Similarly, the Training Committee's role in evaluating the police training officer program and the effectiveness of the PTOs, as required by paragraph 62, reinforces the need for input untethered from the police department and the City Council. Honest assessments are essential. To maintain trust in our police department, the entire Ferguson community must be certain that the high-level goals of community policing and problem-solving policing have been fully embraced by all of our officers. We want to thank Ms. Stevens for bringing high-quality training to the Ferguson Police Department. The curriculums on the use of tasers and the courses provided by Lieutenant Rice appear to be excellent and thoroughly embrace the consent decree and community policing. We really appreciate the help Martin Bartness is providing to the Training Committee. As I suggested in my written comments for October's hearing, the Training Committee can become much more effective with the input from subject matter experts and other trainings as provided for in paragraph 49. Our greatest concern at this time is the scheduling of training. Ms. Stevens brought great urgency to move the training program along, yet over the past 6 months, the training program has slowed markedly. Evidently, the City Council failed to provide funding for training in their budget, and Ms. Stevens is obligated to get council approval individually for each class. Fully funding the training program is currently the crucial step in achieving compliance with the consent decree. One last item concerning the Training Committee. As of this point in time, the Training Committee has no understanding of the status of our department's police training officer program. We spent nearly 2 years developing a curriculum to train the PTO supervisors, yet late last summer, we were informed that the PTOs were already trained and are using a 16-week recruit training format. Per consent decree requirements, the Training Committee needs to assess the current PTO program to ensure that all the trainers fully embrace the philosophies of the consent decree, community policing, adult learning techniques, and problem-solving policing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Knoll.
Good morning, Judge Perry.
Morning.
My name's Jerry Knoll. I'm a longtime resident of Ferguson, maybe 27 years or so. and currently on the Civilian Review Board. I'm currently the chair of the Civilian Review Board. And I'd like to publicly thank and acknowledge the training that the monitor, Ms. Tidwell, and her team has done with the CRB. They've held 2 different sessions, one 2 years ago, one just last night, on how to analyze and the constitutional basis and definitions for use of force. And it's been very helpful to our CRB. We've taken a lot of knowledge out of the use of force audits that the monitor team has done as part of their monitoring of the consent decree, the rubric or the checklist that they have for analyzing use of force, and that's been very helpful to us. We're looking forward to the results of the monitor team's accountability audit that they're in the process of right now. I think there'll probably be a rubric or a checklist coming out of that would be helpful for the CRB, and it would just increase our knowledge of like the right ways to do our job. We're not professionals, we're volunteers. Ms. Tidwell and her team, Darrell Owens, retired Boston police officer in the use of force, they're professionals, and they help to give us an insight on how we can do our job more professionally, even though we're not professionals, and we really appreciate that. Also, I wanted to thank Chief Doyle, since he's come on staff as head of the Ferguson Police Department. The communication between him and the police department and the CRB has dramatically improved. We have regular quarterly meetings with him, with a few of our members, just with him, just to discuss things. That's something we never had in place before with the previous police chiefs. Some of them were not very communicative from our point of view towards us and kind of held us at arm's length. Chief Doyle more embraces us and sees the value that we supply, and we really appreciate that. And I want to thank you for giving the opportunity for public comment. It's valuable for you to hear from the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you all. These are very good comments and specific, and I appreciate them because they will help me in going forward and talking to the lawyers and looking at what's going on. So I appreciate the comments, including their specificity. So at this time, we'll hear from the parties, and as traditionally, we'll start with the city. Mr. Carey?
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you. Of course, you know I normally start by introducing the folks who are in the room, as you mentioned before, so I'll turn around and do that. So we have, starting in the back, we have Councilwoman Naquita Noah, who is with us. Then we also have Chief Doyle. You see Captain Dealworth there. You see Lisa Stevens, who is also with us. Our mayor, Ella Jones, is with us. Our city manager, John Hampton, is here. Michelle Richmond is here as well. You see our municipal judges, and our prosecutor is also here with us today. Are we streaming at all today?
Yeah, we are. It should be on YouTube, the audio.
Okay, so normally I get, text messages or emails from council members who are not present. Make sure you tell the judge I'm here. I have not gotten any of those, but we could still, potential to have.
There could be other
other council members or people who are interested also present as well. So, again, we like to do that, Your Honor, on the record, just so that you know that the city as a whole, our leadership, obviously you heard from all of our citizens, still very interested in the consent decree and our progress there under making sure that, we're moving forward with implementation. A couple of things. One, as you know, and I think you heard one of the citizens mention Mr. Crable Chris Crable, who had been serving as our consent decree coordinator for the last maybe year and a half, 2 years or so, is no longer in that role. He's still with the city, but no longer in the role of consent decree coordinator. And we have Ms. Pat Washington, who was hired as our PIO officer, but I do understand that now she may be the full-time consent decree coordinator moving forward. She's part of the team that Chief Doyle brought in. I think Chief Doyle's hiring was the single most impactful factor recently as it relates to consent decree progress. He's shown dedication and understanding of it and a willingness to roll up his sleeves and really allocate the resources necessary to help the city move forward with compliance. And that includes the hiring of Lisa Stevens and Ms. Washington, who have just been all invaluable to the city's efforts. I think where we are now, you've heard a lot of the citizens talk, and of course, you hear me talk once a month, or somebody from the city talk once a month about where we are with compliance and what our efforts are. It's really, I think, refreshing because I remember, 8-9 years ago when we were in this very courtroom and we had, citizens talking to you about what was going on in the community. You were hearing still a lot of disparaging things about FPD, some of the actions of its officers, some of the incidents that may have occurred, or that that citizens had some interactions with citizens and the police officers. But by and large, what you're hearing from our community now, I think, is that there has been culture change with both FPD as well as our municipal courts. And in particular, you've heard that with the municipal courts, not only from the community, but you've heard that from the Department of Justice. You've heard that from myself. You've heard that from the monitor. You've even heard it from the judges themselves. And so it's really refreshing, I think, from the city's perspective, to be in a posture where what you are hearing from the citizens is more, well, we need to be communicated about what's happening versus, this pattern or practice is happening in our community and we need to, to address that. So I think what you're seeing is the impact of the consent decree, and it's the impact of the consent decree as it relates to, policing and the ability to sort of change the culture that existed, that necessitated the pattern and practice investigation that the Department of Justice did, 10 years ago or so. And just the general change in culture. Where we sort of struggle now as a city is just, I don't think it's the issue of the existence of the patterns or practices, but it is to be able to sort of show the community, right? And to be able to then implement the structure necessary to make that change in culture sustainable, and then to be able to show the community that this is happening. And so that's where we kind of are now in terms of where the work is. There is still a lot of work to be done under the consent decree, but we have done a whole lot of work. And I think it's showing, as you can sort of see from the impact you're hearing from the community members. And not only what's being said, but what's not being said when people stand up in front of you. Because as you know, we have a very active activist community, and they would not hesitate to come here and talk to you and tell you, about whatever it is they are experiencing. So I just kind of want to lay that groundwork for allowing our consent decree coordinator, Ms. Washington, to sort of come up and give you a little bit more detail about where we are and some of the compliance efforts that the city has engaged in since the last time we met. So, Ms. Washington.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments.
And good morning again, Your Honor, to Mayor Jones, to Chief Hampton, to all my colleagues at the City of Ferguson. Good morning. Good morning to our friends and our colleagues at the DOJ and with the monitoring team. Just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge them and acknowledge that relationship because it has been very productive in the time that I have assumed some of the additional duties and responsibilities as the consent decree coordinator. And I do have some prepared remarks here that I want to be able to provide to the court today that will outline many of the initiatives and activities under the consent decree. But before I do that,
can you pull that microphone a little closer to you? There you go. Thank you.
Before I do that, I really want the court to have an understanding of my perspective and how I approach this work. I raised my son in Ferguson. I moved to Ferguson in 2000. My son is a product of the Ferguson Florissant School Districts. I moved out of Ferguson late 2014. Many of the young people who were involved in the protest activity in 2014 were young people that I engaged on a daily basis. I coached boys basketball, and many of the young men that our police department would encounter played basketball for me. And I heard their stories every day of how they were treated and how this community saw them. I am telling you this, Your Honor, because this is not just a job for me. This is not me just assuming some duties and responsibilities. In 2014, I was out on the streets in Ferguson. I worked as the communications director for St. Louis County Executive's Office. And by day, I would sit in meetings and I would listen to strategies and I would listen to outcomes about what was happening in Ferguson. And at night, I would go out to see for myself what people were experiencing. The tear gas, it still burns my eyes when I think about it. The rocks. We toured Ferguson with the county executive, Charlie Dooley, at the time, and people were spitting on us in the day. And I would go out at night so that I could bear witness and make sure that people's rights were being protected. I intentionally moved back to Ferguson recently. And I intentionally said yes to Mayor Jones and Chief Doyle when we had the conversation about coming to work for the Ferguson Police Department as the public information officer. It cost me some friendships. It strained relationships in my own family, including with my own Black son, who couldn't understand why I would go to Ferguson and work for the police department. And so I approached this work, Your Honor, and everyone here, full of determination and full of commitment, not just for myself, but for the people of Ferguson, because they're counting on us. And so I just wanted you to have that context. I can go through this report and I'm going to give you the details and the updates, and I'm very thrilled and I'm pleased to be part of the team and to have a hand at the lifting that's been done by the many hands that came before me.
Thank you. I've talked to you on the phone. I mean, you've been in these phone calls we have every month with the lawyers, and I've heard your reports, but I didn't know your background, so I appreciate your telling me that.
You're very welcome. So I'm grateful and I'm for the assistance and the feedback and the grace that I've received from everyone as I've assumed these new duties as the consent decree coordinator. In addition to my duties as the public information officer, for the Ferguson Police Department. And I do see a lot of overlap in those roles, so I'm very pleased to be able to have that kind of impact and to be able to participate in much of the work that we need to do together. I'm proud of the progress that we've made over the last month or so. And so with that, I'd like to just go ahead and dive right into some of the work that we've been doing, starting with the Ferguson Municipal Courts. I want to take just a moment to acknowledge Michelle Richmond. I know she was here. Did I see her?
There she is.
Michelle, to Judges Smith and Goldstein, and to the court staff. We've all said it before, you've heard it before, and you've seen it for yourself. They have done a phenomenal job in moving our courts toward compliance in what we need to do to make sure that the people in our region, not just the citizens of Ferguson, have faith and confidence that the courts truly are representative. And they are walking the talk, and they are living up to their motto of firm, fair for everyone. And I know, Judge Smith, we owe you a huge royalty fee for that one, and I know that's coming. The Ferguson Municipal Courts has achieved all of the major milestones on the critical items, including the comprehensive amnesty program, integrating our court system with St. Louis County Courts. They have met all of the major milestones. And so we are now in the self-assessment phase, and we are talking about how do we make sure that we can adequately express and represent all the work that has been done so that we can be in compliance and begin to make sure that the monitoring can occur and that, again, the people can have confidence, not just that it's done, not just because we said it's done, but because there is evidence of the doing. And so I look forward to having those conversations with all of our partners and coming to an agreement about how we can do that self-assessment and get that done, completed as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So I want to move on to the Ferguson Police Department, if I may, starting with a few of the items that since our last hearing before the court and some of our court calls where we had some outstanding items, that were long overdue to the court, to the DOJ, to the monitoring team. I want to thank Mr. Crable to his work prior to these items, but one of the things that I wanted to assure when I did assume those responsibilities was that we met our obligation into turning in those items that really are foundational to some of the work that we need to continue to do. So with that said, I want you to know that the city has now provided the updated smart sheet or compliance tracker that we needed to, that needed to get done, and I think court had been waiting for that, and our monitoring team and the DOJ had been waiting for that since December or something of last year, if not longer. So we completed that, sent that to the DOJ, to the monitoring team, and to the court on January 17th. We have had a subsequent call about refining some of the information in that, very minor tweaks. I want to have those finished by the end of this week and have that returned to the monitor. We also submitted the updated crime prevention plan. That was another major foundational plan that was long overdue. We completed that, submitted that to the DOJ on the January 17th, I believe, and that is still with the monitoring team DOJ for feedback, if my notes are correct. We also had we had a salary study that had been started that we needed to complete, and we've completed that, and we submitted that to all the parties on January 16, 2025. So we have had some feedback and some updates. We've resubmitted the document on January 18th, and I think there's maybe a minor issue that we need to clarify regarding the salary study, but we were able to work through the formulas and come to agreement on what to use in the salary study. So great deal of progress on there, and I'm appreciative of all the support and assistance I received in getting that over the finish line. We also have the staffing plan that we turned in, submitted. This information was shared with the DOJ. We do have one small piece that we need to try to button up a little bit. We're waiting for some information from a third-party vendor, but essentially that is complete. We've come to agreement on most of the major items in the staffing plan. And so again, I want to thank everyone for those items I know had been kind of languishing a little bit, but so I'm happy to note that we do have them either submitted and have received some feedback on the majority of those items. So if I can, I'd like to go ahead and move to the staffing update for the Ferguson Police Department. And I'm really pleased to report that the department is now approximately 88% staffed in terms of sworn officers, which is making a big difference in how we assign officers, their visibility out on patrols, at neighborhood meetings. And so I want to acknowledge Chief Doyle's very intentional and I say relentless efforts to recruit and hire quality officers, not just people who are breathing and not just anybody who walks through the door. But we're looking for quality people to join our team. Many of the people who have been hired or who are in the interview process right now have indicated during their process that they applied because of Chief Doyle and because of what he is bringing to the department in terms of community policing and professionalism. That is not something that we can speculate about. That is something that we have solid proof of. Among our newest officers are a recruit from the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Academy, and then we also have 2 veteran officers who are joining from neighboring departments. So that's a good balance for us. We currently have 1 other person who recently started at the academy, and I think at least 2 others who are in the background process at this moment. As a side note, I do want to call out the fact that residents are noting that we have more officers on the street. They are calling us, they send me emails, and they let me know that they feel a difference, especially in terms of visibility, participation at neighborhood meetings, and just in overall response time. The responsiveness is there. So Chief Doyle has initiated also the department's promotion process for sergeants. So we have several outstanding candidates in the process there, and additional units like the Traffic Bureau. We hear it when our citizens tell us they're concerned about traffic, so he's devised a plan for that, and that includes hiring officers who will focus directly on a traffic detail. And we're also hiring some additional staffing in the Detective Bureau. So all told, the department really is moving ahead very aggressively with the recruiting and the hiring plan, and we're happy to see that the residents are noticing that and taking that into account. The next segment I'd like to go to is policy development. We have a lot to get through with the policies and some of the training coming up next. So right now we have 4 policies that are out for public comment. Our TASER 10 revised general order is out for public comment. Our limited English proficiency policy is out for public comment. That is our citations audit, is out for public comment. And our, what we informally call drone policy. Those are all out for public comment. These policies are currently posted to the FPD's Facebook page with a link to the complete policy itself and the feedback form. Responses are shared internally with the consent decree management team and the appropriate department heads as we get that information. These policies are also going to be posted on the city's website. We've talked at length about some of the challenges there. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that we had a workaround and that we had other alternatives to the website. Because people are not just going to come to the website. What I have found in my role as public information officer is that the majority of the people get their information about police practicing, and what we're doing through our social media. And so we've done a workaround to post those sites and their complete links onto our social media, and then sharing those pages with other neighborhood community groups. We also are working with the municipal library to make sure that there's information about the policies and how people can access them there. And we have several different email databases that we're using to also distribute that information. The information about the policies that are available for review are also being shared at our neighborhood association meetings. And so we're trying to find multiple avenues to get the information out and allow the public to have that public comment period for at least the next 30 to 40 days. We also have several policies that are nearing completion. Our GPS fleet tracking policy was approved by the DOJ on January 24th, 2025. That's been sent to the monitoring team for review. We're waiting feedback on that. The flock camera policy was revised on 1/24/25. And we've also had an additional meeting to further discuss some of the refinements that we're going to need to make with our flock camera and the ALPR policy. And most of those are related to the disparate impact and how to audit for that. And just sidebar, I was listening to the chief having a very spirited discussion about that when we with several folks the other day. So I'm looking forward to us being able to address some of those issues and move that policy forward. Our wanted persons of interest policy was submitted to the monitoring team on 1/7/2025 for a final review. We've had a great discussion around that, and as late as even yesterday. And we'll make some additional modifications on that, and we'll return that to the monitoring team for a final review. We anticipate doing that on or before February 7th. The PTO policy is being revised by the Ferguson Police Department based on the monitoring team's feedback and some additional feedback we received from our partners at the DOJ, and related to the selection criteria for the PTO program. So the consent decree paragraph 59 has some very specific guidelines for the selection process, and so we want to make sure that we are addressing those. The deadline for us to get that back to the monitoring team also is February 7th, 2025. These two pieces I'll take together, and it involves our CIT policy, the crisis intervention policy, that is currently being developed, and we are outlining the expectations for the department, the officers, and our dispatchers. The Department of Justice colleagues have told us that the policy review can be conducted in a roll call, and so we have set a deadline for February 7th. That's a busy day, February 7th, 2025, to actually conduct that roll call training. And I'll end this section on a very positive note with the crisis intervention training, and that is the fact that we have selected 4 officers after a rigorous candidate selection process who will form our new crisis intervention team. So we are now moving to the training plan and the training committee to review that and have that in place so that once we get the policies and everything approved and the proper feedback, that we will begin to do some additional training with all 4 of those officers. This is not initial training. All of them have had some initial training. This is additional training on and above what they already have. So the next section I want to visit is training. They've been very, very busy. As far as roll call training, we've done the strip body cavity searches and the correctable violations roll call training. So we conducted that training with patrol officers in December of 2024. We also have firearms training. We received approval from the Department of Justice and the monitoring team on our firearms training plan, and we are updating some of the corresponding general order sections in use of force and in our firearms policies so that they can be in alignment with the training that we are planning to deliver. And the deadline for completing those updates is February 14th. I'm not sure how we're going to be talking about firearms training on Valentine's Day, but we'll make it work. Taser 10 training. The training committee's final feedback has been received. The monitor has approved the training. The next step is for the training coordinator to build the dates into the training calendar, and she is currently working on that. And by she, I mean Ms. Stevens. The First Amendment training. The FPD and the DOJ had a technical assistance call on January 28th to talk about some of the minor tweaks that we need to do to First Amendment training, and we'll follow up with the agreed upon modifications by February 14th. We also have a training that is use of force investigations by our supervisors. We had a call, again, another technical assistance call and discussion where we workshopped some of the requirements of this investigation for supervisors training. We needed to revisit that curriculum and address some of the audit findings that were pointed out by the DOJ. And so we plan to address those findings and have a complete revision by February 21st, 2025. Our use of force training in general, we have engaged our subject matter expert. We met with Mr. Williams on 128, and we began reviewing and addressing the feedback from the Department of Justice on the use of force outline. We had a very rigorous discussion, and we have an additional meeting scheduled that's coming up on 2/4 or 2/5. I can't read my handwriting, with Mr. Williams, myself, and Lisa Stevens, so that we can finalize that use of force training. I don't have a deadline date attached to this item, but we should know something very soon about how soon we can begin to deliver that training. On the PTO training, we do want to make sure that we have our relevant feedback, the training materials, and everything that needs to be reviewed for the modifications by February 10th, 2025, because the PTO training program is essential, especially as we're bringing on new officers and ensuring that they are receiving quality training from their training leader. So I just want to take a minute to commend Ms. Stevens, Captain Dilworth, Detective Sammy Newman, the entire training committee. They have been doing the work, and it is showing in the amount of product and the amount of compliance that we are able to make. So I salute them. They've been very, very busy. If I could now, I want to turn your attention to community policing and engagement. We now have an approved neighborhood policing and community engagement plan. We are now in the process of the implementation phase, and we are mapping out the necessary training required to execute that plan, and that is for both officers and supervisors. And we are developing the elements of that plan, and it also includes the Safe Streets Initiative as part of that plan. And that is critical because it requires some training for our residents and our citizens to be able to analyze data from our crime prevention plan, which we'll talk about in a minute, to help us with our community policing initiatives. Another item that we completed and received approval from the monitoring team in the DOJ since our last report here was the neighborhood policing plan, the neighborhood steering committee MPSC recommendations policy. So we were able to bring that one over the finish line, and that outlines how the FPD will receive and respond to recommendations from this important committee. So I want to thank them for the MPSC members for their feedback, their work, their collaboration on getting this one across the finish line. And speaking of the MPSC, I think you may have heard it earlier in some of the comments, we are working with them to present a community meeting on our unmanned aircraft system, the drone policy. That is critical that we hear from residents and that they have a comfort level with introducing this new technology into Ferguson Police Department's just cadre of tools that we're going to be using to make sure that we're keeping our community safe and that we're using this cutting edge technology responsibly, Your Honor. I'm happy to say, I think you also heard this during the comments, that we have launched our Explorer program. Very thrilled about that. We are now recruiting for that program. The ages are 14 to 20. We're receiving excellent feedback. We did a media blitz last week, and so the calls are coming in. I want to thank Officer John Tane Glover, who has led this effort in terms of making sure that we had accreditation from the Boy Scouts and that we're moving forward with this program. Officer Glover has been working with Officer Andre Spraggins and Officer Michelle Merriweather to implement our new Explorer post. Officer Merriweather is a former school resource officer, so that's going to be really helpful to us as we move forward with the Explorer program. And so that is essentially the updates on the major pieces in the last, I would guess, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks. But I want to, in closing, just be intentional. about letting the court know, letting our citizens know that our goal is to be more strategic, more efficient, and making sure that we are thinking more globally about how we execute all of the initiatives of the consent decree. We want to make sure that we tighten up our internal processes so that we can move things along in a more expeditious manner. And we want to make sure that as we do the work, we are letting people know that we are doing the work. It doesn't matter if we're doing it and we're doing it in the silo and people don't understand what we're doing and they don't see the evidence of the work. So the people of Ferguson, they deserve our very best, Your Honor, and that is what we intend to give them. So I thank you for indulging me. I know that was a long report, but I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. When we have a monthly telephone call with lawyers, and usually Mr. Carey has various members of the staff, consent decree coordinator, et cetera, speak. And the last call we had, we talked about a lot of deadlines. And when you kept saying, yeah, we'll have that by Friday, et cetera, I thought, that's a tight deadline. And I've heard things like this before occasionally, and you did it. So I'm very, very appreciative of how much has been accomplished, and I'm confident that we will consider moving ahead quickly. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
All right, from the Department of Justice.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you. DOJ appreciates the opportunity to brief the court and the public on the progress that Ferguson and the police department have made over the past quarter in terms of implementing the decree. We want to thank the public for their comments today. We know the time it takes to prepare and to come here and to deliver them, the intimidation factor, as well as standing at a podium. So we appreciate that, as well as their longstanding commitment to helping the city and FPD implement the decree. Many who have spoken today have been actively involved in that, and we want to acknowledge that. And we also want to acknowledge and echo the city's and FPD's enthusiasm for the significant progress that's been made over the past quarter, and that we were heartened to hear echoed in public comment today. This is due in large part to Chief Hampton and Chief Doyle committing to disseminating responsibility for implementing the decree more broadly throughout the city and FPD. We are starting to see other members of the city and FPD participate in policy revision, in training development, and this has undoubtedly alleviated some of the burden on Captain Dilworth, although he remains as engaged as ever. In her very short time as consent decree coordinator, Pat Washington, as you have acknowledged, has already provided a very key deliverable, the internal tracker that she spoke about. And as her comments today demonstrate, the pace of output has increased dramatically under her brief tenure, and we are particularly grateful for the transparency she has been providing today in terms of public deadlines that will undoubtedly help with accountability in the implementation process moving forward. This is new, and it has the potential to accelerate the pace of implementation dramatically. Lisa Stevens, in addition to accelerating the pace of training development, which I will address in a moment, is also stepping in to shepherd policies through the review process, and we are grateful for her taking on that responsibility as well. Lastly, Michelle Richmond continues to work with us, as you've heard today, on developing a self-assessment methodology for the Ferguson Municipal Court, and this is a critical step in helping the city demonstrate the significant strides that we all know they have made in implementing this section of the decree. We also recognize, as has been mentioned today, this is the highest level of sworn staffing that FPD has enjoyed in the better part of a decade. Much credit goes to Chief Doyle, his team, and the city for this significant milestone. We understand that there are visions on the horizon to expand supervisory capacity, and they seem to be positioning themselves well to do that. Just a few notes on policy development, because Ms. Washington covered the waterfront very well. We also want to acknowledge that FPD is working to ensure that any new law enforcement technology it acquires is deployed in a manner that is consistent with the decree. As you've heard today, the city has acquired an unmanned aircraft system or drone, license plate reader, fleet GPS tracker.